It was a tricky summer to be in love with rugby, a turgid tour underpinned by underhand antics that ran the gamut from shithouse to shitbag, and aggressive social media bollocks, serving as just the top 10% of an iceberg with the most unpleasant tip rugby's seen since someone last went through Malachi Fekitoa's phone. Rugby, at least in Britain and Ireland, has spent the last month and a half at a low point, the sport's ugliest ebb since someone last let Clive Woodward out of his box. We, as fans, needed not just a miracle, but a miracle worth believing in. Enter Harlequins. Anyone paying attention to the Premiership last season will have undergone a very similar sensation when watching Danny Care and his mad bag of multicoloured frogs. It started with before easing into to oh my god, to somehow becoming gone, Quins, gone! As the entire rugby world went from, I don't mind Harlequins actually, to full-on paid-up members of the Crayon Kit Club, tattooing Alex Dombrandt's biceps on their face and setting up Google alerts titled, "Is Marcus Smith still single?" In a summer dominated by concrete rugby, Harlequins dared to build castles out of Lego and just see if they stuck. And they did stick. On the very day the British and Irish Lions started their Tofu tour, Harlequins completed their transformation from entertaining novelty act to, entertaining novelty act who can win the goddamn Premiership. So, how did Harlequins reinvent themselves and prove every so-called expert saying only boring rugby wins titles wrong in the process? Harlequins FC were founded in 1866 as Hampstead Football Club before a posh boy punch-up 4 years later resulted in half the squad splitting off to form another club, now known as Wasps, presumably because they didn't just want to be Quinn's B team. The remaining members genuinely, and this is apparently true, picked up a dictionary and flicked through it until they found a word they all liked, and after rejecting 7 straight letters of the alphabet, gave up and settled one word before giving us 155 seasons of Harmonica RFC. And whilst the harmonica might have come first, Harlequins decided to live up to their name. For generations, Quins have been English rugby's great entertainers. Battenberg shirts bringing out the colour in their play, the team becoming famous for their fast-paced passing, cool kit, long history, and more recently, refreshing commitment to LGBT plus inclusivity in rugby, and league-leading efforts to put their women's programme, also this season, title winners, on an equal footing to the men. There was ugly stuff along the way too, but nothing quite as off-putting and upsetting as their trophy cabinet. Because World Rugby haven't yet worked out a law change that just gives you silverware automatically for pulling this kind of cool shit, Harlequins have remained 155-year underdogs, winning the English top division just once in their brightly decorated history coming into the start of last season. And 2021 didn't exactly look like the year to bring them title 2 when, this January, the side found themselves facing the second half of the season without a top dog. When Paul Gustard, a head coach with the energy of a man who wants the time for stapling a guy's head to the table in a pub beer garden, took over, things looked good. Gustard had been a phenomenon as a defence coach for both England and Saracens and seemed just the kind of ferocious Jurassic character to turn Quins from silly boys and sillier shirts into proper contenders. Then it didn't happen. The club's famous atmosphere began to sour as Quins felt a loss after loss, living in the lower mid-table, as Gustard was apparently surprised to discover being number one instead of just defence coach meant you had to deal with contracts and performance rather than just stapling anyone who missed a tackle's head to the table of a pub beer garden. Watching Harlequins the first half of last season was like if Robert De Niro played Seinfeld. It suited neither of them, and there was something slightly upsetting about seeing something that's supposed to be fun prioritising weight and power. So Gustard left, and instead of promoting a replacement, Quins did things differently. They appointed a quartet. Forwards coach Jerry Flannery, backs coach Nick Evans, scrum coach Adam Jones, and attack coach Billy Millard would share responsibilities as a gaggle of 4. Millard was appointed the group's spokesperson, but no individual held more weight than the others. If it was a backs issue, Evans got final say. If it was about set piece, they deferred to Jones and Flannery. Team-wide tussles, they just decided by talking like mature, sensible adults. They just talk shit, got to the bottom of it. After the summer, it's a surprise to them that there are any men in rugby union who are capable of acting like adults, but Quins found all 4 of them and put them in charge. This led to an instant culture shift at the club, something aided by them bringing in Owen Eastwood, a former member of the All Blacks legal team turned team culture guru. These days, best known for being Gareth Southgate's mate, who helped him turn around the atmosphere in the... Eddie Jones is England coach. What? Okay, sure. I'm not sure why him working in a minority sport that no one cares about is a relevant part of this guy's backstory, but fine. He apparently worked with the English football team, whatever that is. With 4 voices discussing every decision instead of one grizzled northerner screaming them, the team's approach became much more collaborative. No longer playing for Gustard, they were now there to play for each other. The coaches, 2 of them pretty recently retired themselves, put more emphasis on the player's voice. Their thoughts, feelings, instincts fed into how the team worked and played, just as Quins sat down their entire squad in 1870 to pick a new name. Their new brightest chapter began with the full team giving input on how the organisation was to be run. And so, more than any other team in professional rugby, Harlequins began playing a brand of rugby that the players seemed to enjoy. The coach's job became not to set a template, but to work out how the team wanted to play and make it work in reality. When your team's called Harlequins and your halfbacks are Danny Kerr, who I would wager has taken more quick taps in his life than anyone else ever born in Leeds, and Marcus Smith, a player you can't watch without thinking, who let this small boy try cocaine, chances are you're going to want to play attacking dynamic rugby. In 2021, with defences as good as they are, this is significantly more difficult than it was in the free-flowing, free-love, no-tackling 70s, or even 10, even 5 years ago, before defences worked out you don't need to choose between a blitz and a drift. So, the task for Quins was simple. Find a way to disable that 2021 defence so Marcus and Danny can pull the party strings like it's 1969. On a core rugby level, not a lot shifted after Gustard's departure to a country of softer stapling laws. The team shape, structures, their playbook remained largely unchanged, but there was one big shift in attitude without the ball that begins to explain the things that are different when they did have it. Paul Gustard is, at heart, a defence coach, and a huge part of a defence coach's job is making sure your team remains connected and conserves their energy for when they really need it. Look at Andy Farrell's Island, Nine Neighbours, South Africa. Defence coaches promoted to the top job tend to play logical rugby, and Gustard's Quins were no different. A defence coach sees this situation and encourages his players to hold the line to make sure the opposition can't find a weak link sucked in on the ball to single out and attack. With Gustard gone, the bulk of his system stayed, but this attitude changed. Quins' kit might look like a massive Battenberg, and they began defending like they'd all just inhaled one in a single breath. Harlequins executed all their old defensive patterns like they were on a sugar high. They shot up for every ball, chased out of line to kill every overlap. They became a team who chased every lost cause, a team who never considered them lost. This sugar high led to a fair few crashes, sure, like at any picnic. Wasps here, smell the sugar, and buzz around after Quins attempt 2 intercepts in 3 seconds, very almost resulting in a try for industrial tower block who eats his crust, Will Rowland. But the rewards are so sweet. We're talking intercepts like this by Green, follow-up tries like this by Joe Marchant from a chaotic kickoff, or this key score in the semi-final by Mr. James Chisholm. Right through to just more standard reads. Marcus Smith shut down next to here by blitzing like he's just downed a sherbet lemon, or Kenningham nailing Bath behind the gain line after sensing the opportunity for some sugar-coated chaos. Harlequins began viewing their defence as a way to score tries, and it added an extra energy to the team, which continued flowing through them when they did regain the ball. Here, it spills out of ruck for Marchant, who has multiple men sprinting up to get in his support. Danny Kerr, ever alert and ever the best scrum half in England, doesn't call for the pass himself, but points to Chisholm, adjusting his run to support the support instead, eventually putting himself under the posts. Alongside the lightning fast speed of their ball, the team often now just sweeping away before they had a plan, hoping defenders will be more on the back foot than themselves. This quality and quantity of their running off the ball has been the thing that really set apart 2021 Quins from their counterparts 18 months earlier. To demonstrate, let's have a quick look at that iconic, insane semi-final up at Ashton Gate. The kind of mad, manic, magic game that will make anyone fall in love with rugby, whether for the first time or just the most recent. Now, I wouldn't blame anyone watching this try by Lewis Liner for wondering whether they should have worn contraception first, but it's actually a move that they frequently use under Gustard, such as here against Ulster, where there's also somewhat more mix. So what changes from 2020 to 2021? Idea is, line out, ball off the top to the first receiver. Either 10 or 12, who has 5 runners targeting the same 10-15 metre channel here, all aiming at the area around the same 3 defenders. But here, Marcus Smith isn't selling his run. He isn't an option. Also, no, it isn't going to him, so either Lang or Dombrandt is carrying and they can just easily complete the tackle. Quins go again, second phase, and do make really good ground because Campagnaro here commits to his line brilliantly, but Chisholm's timing is slightly off and Ibitoye has to step to hit the hole. It gets them into 22, but eventually they go on to blow the chance. Campagnaro aside, every player not receiving the ball looks like they're going through the motions, and it's pretty easy for the Ulster defence to guess where it's going. But with 2021 dynamism and energy. Whereas Lang only had one option, Smith here has two for Hughes to watch. This extra runner buys Tapaway a second once he catches the ball. And he then has three options for Sheedy to watch. The 10 gets tied in and Piutau can't choose how to help him in time. Tapaway just keeps an eye on him and slots the ball into Dombrandt's arms, who finds Liner with enough time and pace to finish the try. Every runner is now selling their line, all looking to contort the defence. Here, Quins know if they can coax Malachi Fekitoa out of position, they can open the whole defence up. First, they tell him there's a nude photo shoot taking place in the car park, but it only takes them one research scrum to get done and back out, so they need a plan B. They fire their two biggest carries either side of fly half Jacob Umanga. Umanga's a very good tackler, but that's all providing he's only tackling one man at a time, so Fekitoa takes a half step to help him out. It creates this gap here. Knowing both Fekitoa and Adoglu will try and fill it, Quins give Smith options. Brown, Marchington, Evans, and a dart by Smith himself are all on here, depending on how Wasps try to accommodate for Fekitoa's step inwards. It's just on Smith to react and choose the best option, with Care running superb support for whichever player does break the line. It's called forward, but it's a great indication of what Quins are trying to do. Modern defences are so well organised, players drilled to know what to do in every situation. What Evans and Millard are looking to do is just to make them choose the wrong drill. It's opening the prison door because you convinced the guard to lock the door with the wrong key. Their ability to keep up this energy is also thanks to the club's change in culture. When the quartet took over from the stapling Banshee, the club's head of medical, Mike Lancaster, saw this as something of an opportunity to try something new. The previous season, Ospreys, not the bird of prey, had begun training with a brand new type of mouthguard produced by a local firm. The gum shield contained a microchip used to monitor every contact players received with unprecedented accuracy. But whereas Ospreys, Gloucester and Leicester Tigers have used it to merely monitor player injuries, Lancaster saw potential way beyond anyone else. He made the suggestion, the coaches listened. Players wouldn't wear them just during games and contact training, but everything. Lancaster studied the results. It turned out players were suffering blows during games of touch, exercise drills, in the gym, that player bodies were contorting and tearing in tackles ways the players themselves didn't even feel. Over the next month, Quins used the data to reduce the amount of contact and training by around 90% without sacrificing match intensity. They only risked blows to the body if it was necessary to the drill, if they were preparing them for something expressly physical. Every contact became necessary. This not only led the club to their lowest injury count on record, but allowed for fitness and freshness other teams couldn't match. Flannery credits their altered training program as a result of these mouthguards with their ability to hold out until the 100th minute in that beautifully batshit semi-final against Bristol, a team who will have had a 90% tougher training week. The key to collaboration, as always, is not a team where everybody speaks, but one where everybody listens, and it's evident both in that environment and in the on-field play. Similar to the coaches, every player has their area and others don't impose. Lowe and Marler here reckon they had the extra scrum on toast, so Quins turn down an easy 3 points to take another scrum. Then, as they wriggle out inches from the line, Marcus Smith spots something and Quins give it immediately, not getting sucked into the pick and go so many teams do. Exeter's defence is basically set up to stop their own attackers. It's carefully calibrated to stop teams playing the way they do. On their own line, Exeter flood numbers around the ruck and use a centre, in this case in the final I'll use a photo, to blitz diagonally to kill any backs moves, trusting him to cover multiple men. So, this is what Smith targets. The 10 wrapped around late and calls for Dombrandt to wrap even later, hitting the hole once Devoto's blitzed up on him. It looks like terrible defence by Exeter, and it's actually really good, smart, intelligent defence, just being deployed in completely wrong situation. Because both Smith and Dombrandt arrive and change the picture so late, Exeter have no chance to find the correct key for the lock. It's this kind of situation Quins are looking to create. And it's also just one beat in a season-long highlights reel for Marcus Smith, who's finally grown from bashful tyro into a player worthy of his own talent. Largely, this is down to him genuinely just maturing and improving as a rugby player, but in part it's also down to a change in emphasis. Rugby fans talk a lot about a fly-half's ability to manage a game, but that is not Marcus Smith's job at Harlequins. Danny Care is there to manage the game. Marcus Smith is there to manage the space. Rugby fans also love to believe this kind of space and opportunity magically appears if you swear on a photo of Carlos Spence to never box kick again. But in fact, this is the product of very intelligent kicking by Harlequins. It's all because of kicking. A rugby field is about 10,000 square metres big, and the opposition only have 15 players to try and cover it, so there's always going to be this kind of space they can never reach. Smith's job is not to worry about the scoreboard or the clock, but to try and manipulate this space to get the 15 opposition players covering the wrong parts of that 10k, so he can then pull the trigger and exploit the undefended space. So Sometimes it comes from just staying alert. Smith's biggest flaw pre-pandemic was his habit of overruling the game plan out of impatience. He's not calling the ball at the back here because something is on, it's because he wants to touch the ball. However, the last 18 months he's become a far more capable and patient system player, happy to just slot in and play the coach's game plan, but the thing that really sets him apart is the way he still remains alert to opportunities. Here, he's very flat to drop the ball off to a forward to smash up, but he notices Josh Bassett on the far wing has spotted opposite number Lewis Liner, has come in field and begins to rush in on him. Smith being so flat, he figures the kick isn't on, but he's missed Joe Marchant on the far touchline. A mistake Smith doesn't make, the kick sitting up beautifully, allowing Marchant to gallop down the wing like a polka dot pony to score the try. However, more often, more work needs to be done. Exeter make a break, and then two things happen at once. Kenningham and Baldwin make a brilliant turnover, and Exeter wing Alex Cuthbert pulls his hamstring. Danny Kerr notices this and slots into the 10 channel, barking for the ball. It doesn't come back, so he runs in and kicks off the base instead, targeting exactly where Cuthbert would normally be. Tom O'Flaherty has slid across from the opposite wing to cover, and fullback Nowell takes the high ball. Exeter's default is always to kick the ball so it remains alive rather than going for touch, but with Cuthbert injured, they kick infield rather than down the wing for him to chase. Quinn secure the ball, and Smith wants it right away, kicking again. O'Flaherty and Cuthbert, who can barely walk, are both on this touchline, meaning Nowell is covering about 600 square metres alone, and Smith prods it outside him, but crucially, keeps it in field, doesn't go for the touchline, knowing Exeter will then kick it back. They do, and he sends Green into contact so he can try and put the ball over O'Flaherty's confused little head. It's charged down, but it's a tricky space for Exeter to look for touch, so they only find Murley instead. Quins play another phase as Exeter look to organise afresh. O'Flaherty is now covering Cuthbert's wing, Nowell is covering O'Flaherty's wing, and fly-off Joe Simmons is covering Nowell's fullback position, so Smith drives the ball low, looking to split O'Flaherty and Simmons, tying them both into this corner whilst catching them both out of position. Again, Exeter keep it in field, but that field is now hella broken. O'Flaherty chases his own kick, which means Simmons then has to slot onto his wing, but Green offloads, Liner and Kenningham taking the turn, and the breakdown is super quick. With Simmons on the wing, Nowell has floated back into fullback, and it's left his wing totally undefended. Smith throws an absolute perler and Murley can outpace Hill, the support on hand as ever. Marchant comes so close, but Kerr's there lightning quick and hits Esther Hazen, who crashes over in the corner for a properly stunning try. Much as we love to watch replays of the glories offloading and running rugby, none of this happens without Quins kicking and managing the space, contorting the defence by changing what parts of the pitch they have to watch so superbly. If you had trouble understanding how Exeter were aligned, imagine how they felt. Quins smelling blood and using Smith's kicking game to manipulate the wound until it's wide open enough to smash off the body, smash it off so they don't have the whatever part of the body was bleeding now. However, there's one other key change to Smith's game in the last 18 months, and it's right out of the Nick Evans school of being really good at rugby. One of Evans' trademarks as a player was this: he never took the ball standing still. Even if he wasn't sprinting forwards onto it, he made sure to take little steps to the side. This shuffle as he catches the ball attracts a second defender, allowing Fury Potato Mike Brown to score in the corner. Now coaching, Evans has passes on to Smith. Smith takes the ball arcing outwards, but straightens the second Ojomo turns his hips to face him, firing the ball outside him. He then pops up a few phases later and runs the same arc out towards the touchline, but this time the defender goes with him, so he flicks it back inside to Northmore, who gallops over. This is a clear overlap anyway, but his little wriggle prevents Bassett drifting to cover a second man and allows Lang to score in the corner. The important thing is he's moving before he catches the ball. The Smith a few years ago had a habit of moving afterwards and closing off space for other players by trying to engage that line as a running threat when he was actually just costing his side yardage. He was costing them time. But it's a huge contrast to his first touch of the Premiership final here. Drifting out as he catches it, snaps back at Hill, looking at Murley's inside line. Hepburn and Hill both watching Murley, so Smith wriggles for a tiny gap, created by changing direction 3 times in 4 seconds. And this Evans influence spread throughout the entire team. 18 months ago, Quinn's carries were fairly obvious. They were only as hard to stop as the player of the ball was the player tackling them. No value added by the team's shape or tactics. Have a look at Quinn's in the 22 now instead. Not only has their increased fitness and support work led to faster ball, their carrying options are all moving all the time, adjusting to the defenders in front of them, wiggling into new positions right as Kerr is passing to them. Forwards are constantly stepping, picking spaces not faces, and remaining dynamic. During this period of pressure in the Premiership final, none of the Quinn's carries are head on. They're all drifting, flitting as they take the ball, until this by Wilco Low. Exeter's line speed, meaning he hits in straight, but the support and drive by Simmons sends him right and allows him to wriggle out left and cross the line. Exception that proves the rule. Changing direction gets Quinn's going in the 22, just as their bold change of direction kick-started things off the pitch. Maybe it's been a tricky summer to be in love with rugby because teams like Harlequins are all too rare. Not necessarily teams that play with flair or style or kits that look like a Battenberg made out of Play-Doh, but teams whose faces are adorned with the same smiles whilst they're playing as once the final whistle goes. Harlequins finishing the season as champions of England might be a minor miracle, but the team transforming themselves into a club that prides itself on listening, inclusivity, enjoying what you do and always looking forwards, never back, is something any of us can do and all of us can learn from. Harlequins are that rarest thing in rugby. A club that's worth not just supporting, but believing in. Thank you for watching that. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it worked. I recognise it's quite overdue. It's been a long time coming. I want to have it up for the start of the Premiership season, but unfortunately I've been ill and I lost my voice and I've had loads sorts of things going on. So that wasn't possible, but there's plenty more coming. I want to do some stuff on the URC, which is obviously started now as well. I want to try and pick up some stuff on the Rugby Championship. I'm going to see how that can work and, trying to work out what's going on with Sanzar and so on. So there's loads more coming on the channel ahead of obviously the autumn starting down the line and, lots more rugby actually going on around us. I'm going to try and increase how often I'm uploading during international periods. That's all going to be happening very soon. The podcast is going to come back as well, looking at the 87 World Cup rather. And otherwise, I'll see you very soon for more stuff. Thank you for the support on Patreon, and I'll see you very soon. Yes!